everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, Twitch, X, and on Instagram. I am Bryson Carver, and I wanted to not be the first one to say this, but for the first time on Carving It Up, Happy New Year, Happy 2026. Hope everyone else is off to a great start to your year. Listen, we're off to a great start on Carving It Up because the fact of the matter is, this is always one of my favorite shows of the year. You add to the fact that there's obviously a 12-team college football playoff with, as I said, coming into the week, 8 teams that I think all of which had some path or another to win a national championship. Well, we're down to 4. All 4 games had their own, storylines and things to discuss, which we'll get to all throughout the show. All 4 reactions to all 4 games in the college football playoff, quarterfinal. Also NFL predictions, not just for the Week 18 games, but for playoff scenarios. We do this every single year on the show. I predict the games that have absolutely no meaning whatsoever, like the only significance they have is draft positioning. Some teams might be trying to lose these games. And then I look at the playoff scenarios. How will they look? What are we to anticipate as we go into the final week of the NFL regular season, then get into the regular season finale predictions, and then look at what I think the standings will look like. Looks like I've already got a comment from my man, Patrick Brown. Patrick says, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope all is safe, well, and warm. It's actually relatively warm here in Tennessee, Patrick. It's a good, 50 degrees or so. So I can't complain. Not for January 2nd. I can tell you that right now. But also, carving up the context, since we didn't do a show on Wednesday, I figured as we wind down the regular season, given the fact that New England, they're playing for the 1 seed, but chances of them getting that are slim. And as for the Rams, they have nothing to play for. I think Stafford is going to give it one more go against the Cardinals on Sunday. The MVP conversation has been very, it's been very lively. It's been back and forth. It's been a lot of pro Stafford people, pro Maye people. I've got a decision. I've got a choice, and I'll explain to you the context behind one of the more tight, hotly contested MVP races that we have seen in quite some time. But let's get into some college football as we get started on the show. But first, them Ole Miss Rebels. How about that? The Rebels get the W over the Georgia Bulldogs 39-34. It continues a streak of college football games, particularly in the Southeastern Conference, where it is hard to beat a team 2 times in a season. A great team 2 times in a season. Alabama didn't beat Georgia twice. Oklahoma didn't beat Alabama twice. And now Georgia didn't beat Ole Miss twice. So we see this sort of recurring theme. The Ole Miss Rebels get the W. It's funny. It was a kind of a reverse of what the game was earlier this year. The only game Ole Miss lost in the regular season was in between the hedges at Georgia a few months ago. It was it feels like Ole Miss is controlling this game. They're scoring at will. Georgia's defense has no answer for Trinidad Chambliss and Kyron Lacey. All of these guys up 9 points, 4th quarter, second half. Georgia makes a run. Gunner Stock to make some plays. The defense gets just enough stops, and Georgia ends up winning the game by 8 in between the hedges in Athens, Georgia. Well, in this situation, for large stretches of that football game, it's like, yeah, Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs are the better football team, but Trinidad Chambliss just keeps making play after play after play over and over and over. And by the way, can we just show Trinidad Chambliss's numbers yesterday against Georgia? He was nothing short of sensational. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 65% completion, 362 passing yards, 7.9 yards per attempt. You see there at the bottom, the game-winning drive. Down 9 in the 4th quarter. Ole Miss is able to rally and put some drives together, win the football game. Credit to Ole Miss's defense as well, because in all of the craziness and what was the most entertaining game of this college football playoff quarterfinal round is Georgia's down in the red zone, opportunity to take a 4-point lead to where Ole Miss has to score a touchdown. They end up forcing Georgia to a field goal. Woodring, the kicker for Georgia, forced him to a kick. That allowed, Chambliss and that Ole Miss offense to go down. And credit to the kicker for Ole Miss, who hit 3 bombs over the course of that game. You're telling me special teams doesn't matter. Ole Miss showed you that yesterday. Heck, you could argue Ohio State and their missed kicks showed you that in the Big Ten championship game against Miami. We'll get to Ohio State in about 30 minutes or so. But if you're Ole Miss, and if you are Lane Kiffin in particular, because Ole Miss is playing with house money now. If you're Lane Kiffin, boy, you better win a national championship at LSU. The pressure is on like never before. You thought there was pressure now. You thought that there was a situation where it's, okay, it's LSU, there's NIL money, automatically there's pressure. The team you left, and again, I said it on the show last month when Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss to join LSU to become their next head coach. The NCAA rules and scheduling practices are to blame without question. No question about it. Rick Pitino, I think it was, mentioned, hey, we don't see this in college basketball. We don't see a situation to where the schedule conflicts are such where I would leave my team before March Madness. We do see it in college football, and that's an NCAA problem. But the fact remains, Lane Kiffin left. The fact remains, Lane Kiffin has coaches on that staff at Ole Miss that could leave in any second. That could leave, that might have to leave to join LSU because the transfer portal has opened. So if you're Ole Miss, now you're a real conundrum. You're playing Miami, a game that could come down the wire. Awesome defense in Miami versus a great offense in Ole Miss. That's the classic matchup we love to see in football and in sports for that matter. High-octane offense, hard-nosed, physical, hit-you-in-the-mouth defense. Now you could lose some coaches. And Trinidad Chambliss, who I would make a case, folks. Y'all heard me talk about Diego Pavia. My Pavia take got a lot of play on the YouTube channel, on TikTok and Instagram. Is that Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt quarterback, Heisman final, second to the Heisman to Fernando Mendoza, who we're going to talk about in a few minutes. He went from the underdog, good for him, we're pulling for him story, to, God, this kid's a jerk. I can't stand him. Thank God Iowa beat them in the Rely Quest Bowl, whatever the heck bowl game that they played in. Now you have Trinidad Chambliss, who spends 4 years at something called Ferris State. He's a two-time Division II national champion, steps up and plays out of his mind. Trinidad Chambliss, after Ole Miss's win, giving credit where it is due to the most important, giving credit where it is due to the most important being out there for Ole Miss getting the W yesterday against Georgia.
Man, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. Through and through, he's been with me. Ups and the downs, man. I just got to give thanks to God. It's been amazing. Amazing journey. I got to thanks to Oxford community, Ole Miss, for giving me the opportunity to play here.
I mean, this is a guy who was the backup quarterback coming into the season. He was the backup. Steps in, plays outstanding football, leads Ole Miss to the playoff, get a W we all knew where they were going to get against Tulane at home. And then against Georgia as a dog. I took Georgia to win, but I took Ole Miss in the points. I'm like, wait, what was it, 6.5? An offense that good, indoors, Sugar Bowl, team they're familiar with, could have beaten in Georgia. Ole Miss plus 6.5 was the play here. There's no question about it. That offense showed up, made some big plays the passing game. There were a couple of plays that Trinidad Chambliss made, particularly in the fourth quarter, where he's rolling to his left. It ends up getting forced out 20 yards, 25 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's like, okay, there's no chance he gets away with that in the NFL. But in college football, if you're a good enough athlete, despite the NFL prospects that Georgia has on their roster, you can be able to make those throws and make those plays and keep drives alive. So listen, when we talk about what is a weak quarterback draft going into 2026, like, to me, Fernando Mendoza is my number one prospect. Dante Moore's too. I'm not terribly high on Ty Simpson. I know he's playing through a lot of injuries yesterday. We'll get to Indiana, Alabama, in just a few minutes, but not terribly high on Ty Simpson. Doesn't move great. Arm strength is good, not special. I'm not so sure Trinidad Chambliss isn't a guy we look at and say, hey, could he be a, early to mid second round pick? Right? Is this a guy who, like, accuracy in the NFL is probably going to need some growth, but the athleticism there, it's an athletic quarterback's league now more than it ever has been. Offensive coordinators want guys like that. There's a reason that if you're the Detroit Lions, you have some limitations with what you can do with Jared Goff. If you can refine Trinidad Chambliss as a passer, who's to say that he couldn't be a relatively solid starter in the NFL? I hope the kid gets a chance. He's really easy to root for. This Ole Miss team is easy to root for. And now, man, if they get to the national championship, screw it. If they win the whole thing, you want to talk about pressure on Lane Kiffin. LSU's already a demanding fan base in all of their sports, but let's be honest, I got some LSU fans I know in my life. Shout out to my man Kaysen, who I worked with back at the college program. Good guy. LSU fans love their sports. It's a football school. It just is. That is first and foremost in that athletic department, in that fan base. Boy, you better win immediately. With the transfer portal, with as much money as LSU has to utilize the resource they have to utilize in terms of NIL, just by virtue of being LSU. Tell you what, and give credit to Ole Miss, by the way. Honestly, this is a program. They'll move on to Indiana, Alabama. This is a program that had the rug pulled out from underneath them. Not that they didn't see that it was potentially coming. Was Lane Kiffin going to LSU? Was he going to Florida? Was he going to stay at Ole Miss? But you win the regular season finale, gets Mississippi State. You're 11-1. You know you're going to be in. And at the last second, he darts off for one of your biggest rivals in your conference. You take care of business at home against Tulane. Down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, similar to how you were up 2 scores in the fourth quarter against Georgia in the earlier meeting, and he stringed those stops. Chambliss makes some plays, and he won the football game. Kudos to the Ole Miss Rebels for getting that W. Got some comments. Yeah, I was referring to the weather in Tennessee earlier. Patrick says it's about 33 degrees here in southern Indiana. Listen, the only hot thing there is in Indiana is that football team. We'll talk about them in just a second. Patrick, Ole Miss versus Georgia has been the best game thus far. Chambliss' big throw, clutch. It was NFL scouts. Look for how you handle these situations, poise, and no stress in his genes. And he also says that Austin Simmons, the quarterback for Ole Miss, is entering the portal. Yeah, Austin Simmons was the starting quarterback for Ole Miss coming into the year, and then Chambliss comes in, and the rest, they say, is history. Like, this is a guy who is going to be beloved forever in Oxford. They didn't make excuses. Chambliss, listen, there were Ole Miss players who took shots at Lane Kiffin on social media. That's par for the course. You understand that. But this is a kid who said, nope, I'm an Ole Miss Rebel. I came here with the anticipation of being a backup. Now, all of a sudden, am I the second best quarterback left in the playoff? I think Mendoza's the number one. I'm not talking about NFL prospect, just overall productivity. He or Dante Moore, Beck is the clear number 4 of the last 4 college football playoff quarterbacks. I don't know. I find all 4 teams in this playoff, to varying degrees, very easy to root for. I'm the type of guy, listen, and this is why I'm very pro-dynasty, more so in pro sports than college sports, because in pro sports, there's kind of no excuse for you to suck for long periods of time, because if you suck, you get a high draft pick. Not the case in college sports, as we know. But I'm somebody who likes there would be a Darth Vader, for there to be the Joker in sports, for there to be an antagonist. That's why dynasties are great for sports, why the Chiefs and the Patriots have been great for the NFL, why the Warriors were great for the NBA, the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, like the Dodgers now in baseball. But there is an element of now that, and I'll get to this in a second with Bama, now that NIL's come into the picture in the last half decade, now that conference realignment has happened in the last couple of years to kind of balance the scales to a certain degree, it's as open as it's ever been. You will not find one single solitary college football fan, coach, player, prognosticator, you name it, that had Oregon, Indiana, Miami, and Ole Miss as your Final Four. No one saw it coming. And that's what we love about this sport. Speaking of Indiana, oh my goodness. In the Rose Bowl, and what we initially thought was going to be some pretty nasty conditions. You turn on the Rose Bowl parade New Year's Day morning, it's like, oh gosh, this is going to favor Indiana because they can run the football better than Alabama. But the weather clears up fine. The weather is as good as it could have been given the torrential downpour that we saw in the 24 hours or so leading up to it. In Indiana, from the jump, from the second that ball was kicked off the tee at the iconic Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, Indiana dominated in every way, shape, and form. We can show you the numbers. I mean, they won in everything. 407 in terms of total yards, 407 to 193. Just unbelievable. Rushing yards, 215 for Indiana, 23 for Alabama. Doubled them up in first downs, 22 to 11. 64% on third down to Alabama's 27%. Over 10 more minutes, or almost 10 minutes, I should say, more time of possession. Of course, final score was 38-3 with the Hoosiers winning when it's all said and done. I have 2 takeaways from this game, one for Indiana, one for Bama. Let's talk about Indiana. So we know Fernando Mendoza is the best quarterback in college football. Again, with respect to Dante Moore, who I know a lot of NFL scouts are saying is the best quarterback in this upcoming class. He very well might be. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a potential franchise quarterback in the league. But when I see this kid Mendoza, I see arm strength. I see arm angles. I see he's not somebody who's going to blow you away with his athleticism, but he's deadly accurate. What was he yesterday? 14 for 16. Didn't have to throw that much because Indiana led the whole game, but makes all the throws in the book. Listen, people were clowning. We'll play the bite. People are clowning Fernando Mendoza's, soundbite at the end of the game after they're like, oh, it's kind of corny. We'll play in a second. Fernando Mendoza, after Indiana, walloped Alabama.
Well, first of all, my team and I want to give all the glory to God. What a historic venue, the Rose Bowl, one of the best venues in all of sports. It's such a great conglomerate of individuals coming together and really forming complementary football. Coach Sig has hit on us, no complacency. And especially when you have a bye, it's tough to get in the rhythm of football. But once we got our feet on the ground, we knew that we're going to stick together and come out with this W.
I know people cringe at that. I know people are like, oh, it's kind of cheesy, corny. Give me that over Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we do. Listen, I've said this. Nick Wright is, I think, the originator of this take, and I wholeheartedly agree. Give me honest arrogance over false humility any day of the week. No question about it. But the quarterback position is a little bit of a different ballgame. The quarterback position, you almost have to conduct yourself as like coach, owner, GM, and player all bundled up into one. That's what it is. You know, Tom Brady wasn't, before he was the greatest quarterback of all time and Tom Terrific and the GOAT and all those things. Tom Brady was kind of at times, and I love Tom, but an awkward interview. Patrick Mahomes, kind of an awkward interview. Josh Allen, same thing. Like that. This is not new. This is not a thing that is exclusive only to Fernando Mendoza. So I love the kid. I love his temperament. I love what he brings to the table. We saw the poise in that Big Ten championship game against, Ohio State. We saw it against Penn State and against Iowa, like multiple times this season, back against the wall, and he stepped up and made every single big throw that he had to. And then obviously yesterday it was just pure domination. For Curt Cignetti, who I'll be honest, guys, when it came to Indiana, and I think they started either 9-0 or 10-0 last year. They didn't really beat anybody. Then they run into Ohio State. And I remember the score, I think Ohio State won by like 7, but the Buckeyes were up like 3 touchdowns with 5 minutes to go. Like the Buckeyes dominated that game at the Horseshoe. And Curt Cignetti was talking before their playoff game against Notre Dame, like, man, nobody wants to see us. I'm like, get a load of this guy. Like, kudos for turning Indiana around, but like, come on, man. Like, this is the Big Ten we're talking about. This is Ohio State's conference and Michigan and, teams like that have come into the Big Ten, like a USC and a Washington and obviously an Oregon. This is Wisconsin and Iowa's conference. And in the last 2 years, we have eras in college football. Well, among coaches. We have eras in politics and in entertainment. There are eras. There are timestamp moments that we look back and say, who defined this period in this industry? I think 15, 20 years from now, we'll look back and say, this was Curt Cignetti's industry. This was Curt Cignetti's era. Now, Indiana's got to win a national championship. They got to get 2 more W's. They've got a big-time game. We talk about it's hard to beat a team twice. They beat Oregon earlier this year. Oregon's going to come in, obviously, with a lot of revenge on their mind. That's going to be a great, great football game that we're going to see. I think that one's in Atlanta, I'm pretty sure. It's Atlanta and Arizona are the 2 games. But Curt Cignetti is a guy who comes into Indiana understanding what the modern college football landscape is. We got to use NIL, and we really got to use the transfer portal. And he has. He brought a lot of guys with him, from his previous stop. He's utilized the transfer portal very effectively. I mean, you look at this is one of the greatest coaching jobs we've seen in the history of college football. This is Indiana. Show the graphic. This is Indiana between 2021 and 2023. So the 3 years before Curt Cignetti got there. I mean, this is insane. 9-27, 3-24 in the Big Ten, 0-10 against top 25 teams. Obviously, you see there, no 10-win seasons, no top 10 finishes. More on that in a second. Indiana averaged in that 3-year span between 21 and 23, they averaged about 21 points a game. Averaged. For the record, Indiana in their history had never finished in the top 20 in the final college football playoff, or the final college football top 25 rankings. Since Curt Cignetti's taken over, they've been, is it fair to say if they win the national championship, the gold standard? The man's 25-2 this, in his time in Indiana, 18-1 against the Big Ten, 4-2 record against top 25 teams, 2 10-win seasons, 2 top 10 finishes. Again, Indiana had never had a top 20 finish in their history, in their over 100-year history. Curt Cignetti has 2 top 10 finishes in 2 years, and they've gone from averaging 21 points a game to 41 points a game in the 2 years thus far of Curt Cignetti's time with the Hoosiers. Is that Nick Saban, greatest college coach of all time? And I've always said that the reason that Saban to me is miles and miles better in his sport coaching than Belichick was in his in the NFL, with the Patriots particularly, of course, is that Saban adapted to the modern college football around about 10 years. About 10 years ago, college football shifted from a defense, run the football, that's the SEC brand, right, to, yeah, and you also need a playmaker. You need a difference maker at quarterback. So used to Saban could win with Greg McElroy or A.J. McCarron or Jake Coker, like nice guys, like good in their roles, in their game manager roles, but you could get by because you had Julio Jones, you had Amari Cooper, you had Derrick Henry, you had Trent Richardson, you had all these, Mark Ingram, all of these guys to take the load off the quarterback. And then the game changed. And he got Jalen Hurts and Tua and Mac Jones and Bryce Young. The sport changed and Saban evolved with it. But then when it evolved to NIL, into transfer portal conference realignment, Saban says, I don't feel comfortable. I don't think I can lead Alabama into being the best version of itself that it can be in this new era. Therefore, I'm going to retire. Respect. I think Clemson fans wish Dabo Swinney would do the same. Curt Cignetti came in. He wasn't the innovator of this new movement, of this new era in college football. He sees how teams that utilize NIL have been successful. He sees teams that use the transfer portal have been successful. And he says, I'm going to use that and then some. Fernando Mendoza did not originate in Indiana. He originated at Cal. He brought him from the Cal Bears to Indiana. Heisman Trophy winner, best quarterback in college football. Utilized it to make his defense, it's either Indiana or Miami, as the best defense in the country. Very well could see a national championship between those two. It might be like, 17-14 is the final score. Be a good one for some of the old school fans out there. But kudos to Curt Cignetti, kudos to this Indiana squad they didn't change the game so much as they took advantage of the new era that college football has ushered into. And they've been the kings at that in the first 2 years. Again, keep in mind, Indiana won 9 football games total in the 3 years before Curt Cignetti got there. Since then, 25-2, a Big Ten championship, and they're 2 wins away from a national championship. Outstanding coaching job by Curt Cignetti. On the Alabama side, though, and this isn't really an Alabama take so much as it is an SEC take. I had already discussed this on the show in the past. On this show, on the Saturday morning tailgate, which you can check us out tomorrow. I believe we're going to be doing a show tomorrow, hopefully 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time, live on the Grid Network to recap the 4 playoff games, the quarterfinal games, then predict the semifinal games. Myself, Tim, Arthur, it should be fun. I've talked about it on that show and on this show, Carving It Up. That as the new era of college football has come into what we know it to be now, the SEC's run of dominance is fading. Well, now we can say for good, it's dead. It's over. Then that's not to say an SEC team can't win a national championship. Shoot, Ole Miss might do it this year. Very well might do it this year. But the run of the SEC, and I'm a Vols fan, by the way. I'm not a Big Ten homer, or Big 12, or ACC, or rest in peace Pac-12. I'm a Vols fan. But this ain't the conference I grew up with, in large part because of conference realignment. NIL transfer portal, all of the things that I previously mentioned. Is that if you look at since 2023, so 2023, Michigan won the Natty. Last year, Ohio State won the Natty. This year, unless Ole Miss wins it, it's going to be a non-SEC school. It's going to be, Miami, Oregon, or Indiana. In non-conference bowl games and college football playoff games. So we're taking out, Alabama versus Oklahoma this year, or Ole Miss, Georgia. In non-conference bowl games or college football playoff games. Do we have this graphic since 2023? That's damning. That is shocking. The SEC in such games, 15-17. They're 2 games below 500. The only conference that's worse is the ACC. They're 8 games under 500. But the Big Ten, the clear at this point, without a shadow of a doubt, best conference in college football as we see here today. And look at the Big 12. Better than the SEC as we see here today. Even despite the Texas Tech loss to Oregon yesterday, and despite the conference not exactly giving the best and brightest talent relative to the SEC and the Big Ten schools. That run of dominance, that's over. When you have Indiana clocking Alabama to the point in the fourth quarter where, Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler, who do a great job calling the games, are like, God, this is kind of embarrassing. Like, I know this isn't Nick Saban's Alabama, but come on. To me, contrary to what Bama fans think, I don't think this is a knock on Kalen DeBoer. I think Kalen DeBoer's a great coach. I think if you have expectations for Kalen DeBoer to be Nick Saban, that's too much for anybody to bear. But when you have an era where, let's be honest, in previous years, SEC was doing some shady business behind the scenes as it relates to paying players. Now, I wish it didn't have to be shady. I think players should have always been paid from the jump. I'm glad the Supreme Court finally essentially legalized it a few years ago. I've been on that train since the show started. This show started back in 2019. But the fact is, those were the rules in the SEC blatantly violated in the case of Ole Miss, who got caught. Tennessee with Jeremy Pruitt, who got caught. Everybody else, let's be honest. You think Nick Saban, his recruiting tactics are less smiles at LSU, Ed Orgeron at LSU? It was just, hey, come here because we're a big No. There was some funny business going on behind the scenes. Now that it's out in the open, now that anybody can do it, that can, be in a competition, a bidding war essentially for high school players, the field's been leveled. See, I was told when NIL came into fruition back in 2021, oh my gosh, this is going to be unfair for Alabama and Texas and Ohio State and Notre Dame and Michigan and the Final Four features. Oregon, now Phil Knight has a lot to do with that, of course. Oregon's got crazy NIL money. Ole Miss, Indiana, Miami's got, big time money as well, but not necessarily blue bloods. Miami's a blue blood, and Oregon is the best blue blood, I guess, not to ever win a national championship, so to speak. But these are not the iconic brands that we've seen for our whole lives. It's a new day. It's a new era in the sport. And the SEC can no longer get by. And, we're just the best conference. Do they have the best players? Sure. I remember Oklahoma last year was 6-7, something like that. They were a bad team. Had a bunch of guys go to the NFL. SEC and Big Ten consistently putting the most players in the NFL draft. But whether it's a coaching disadvantage, an NIL disadvantage, a quarterback disadvantage, the Big Ten's got the SEC beat, and now the SEC's kind of on par with the Big 12. Again, show the numbers. Since 2023, non-conference record in college football playoff and in bowl games. SEC's 2 games under 500. That's just the reality. That's where we're at today in the modern college football landscape. So I don't view yesterday, I view it more so as 2 things. A, as the fact that, Indiana's kind of the standard program now. We'll see if they can finish the job for the next 2 games. And B, it's not really a knock on Alabama, who lost Ty Simpson, in the middle of this game due to injury. It's a representative of the entire conference. You look at Alabama, they were picked by many to win the SEC championship game against Georgia. It's not the same conference it used to be. Forget your granddad's SEC. This isn't your uncle's SEC. It's not. And I hate to say that as a Vols fan, but that's the reality. Patrick says IU and Oregon, Indiana and Oregon is going to be played in Atlanta. Hoosiers are favored -4. Ole Miss and Miami will take place in Arizona. The Hurricanes, interesting. Okay, Miami is a 3.5-point favorite. I'm very excited to talk about Miami and Ohio State, which was, in the way that it played out, I think, I don't want to say caught a lot of us off guard, because I view Miami consistently as one of the best teams in college football. But let's talk about that in just a minute. Let's take a 1-minute break, but when we come back, why Miami, from the jump, clearly and obviously, without a shadow of a doubt, was always one of the best teams in college football. It was always one of the clear contenders to win a national championship this season, despite, to me, the deficiencies at quarterback. And, of course, we'll get to Oregon and Texas Tech, as well as carving out the context, Stafford versus Drake Maye. Come back with all of that in just 1 minute. We've got a loaded show, and I mean a loaded show. We got NFL predictions for later. We got a short Bryson's best 10, final Bryson best 10 of the regular season. We've got, again, NFL playoff scenarios, NFL Week 18 predictions. Oh, I can't wait. January playoff football, this is good as it gets. We'll be back in just 1 minute here on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Thanks to everybody for stopping by on a jam-packed Friday show. This is one of my favorite episodes to do of the entire calendar year. It is the playoff scenarios, what could happen, division races, 1-seed races, like all of the wild card teams are set in both conferences. Like the 3 teams in the AFC, it's second place in the AFC South, Buffalo and the Chargers. Those are all 3 locked in. And in the NFC, it's, second place in the NFC West, the Rams and the Packers. And all we have to decide now is, okay, who's the division champion as far as who's going to get in or is going to be left out. NFC South and AFC North, of course, that affects my Pittsburgh Steelers in a major way. I'll predict all of those games, look at all those scenarios in about 45 minutes or so. So definitely stay tuned for that. We're going to have tons of talk about. Miami beating Ohio State. I'm not necessarily shocked that Miami won necessarily. I actually predicted in this game, I had Miami winning and covering 9.5. You're like, then what about this was... I thought this was going to be a close 17-13 kind of game going the fourth. Carson Beck would commit a grievous error. Ohio State would score and then kind of run away with the momentum from there. We've seen Ohio State do that. We kind of saw them do that to Michigan this year, like kind of walk down a team that's of their weight class. And Miami never let them do it at all. That defensive line's got NFL players everywhere. They run the football well with that kid Fletcher, who I really, really like. Cool story, great kid. Like I hope he makes it in the National Football League because he's a dope story. But for all of those on college football playoff selection Sunday, a few weeks ago, man, Notre Dame got screwed. I mean, the win against Miami, or the win against Notre Dame that Miami got, well, that came back in week 1. Like, who cares about it? Does it really matter? Those teams aren't what they... First of all, so the game doesn't count now? That's number 1. Number 2, and Greg McElroy, to his credit, after the ACC championship game, was spot on the money on this, because I went back and looked as well. If you watch the game, Notre Dame had a big fourth quarter. Miami dominated that game. Miami pushed Notre Dame all over the field at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And is that not what football has always been from the dawn of time, from the dawn of the start of the sport? Line play in particular, as I always say on the show, moving another grown man against his will. That's what Miami did against Notre Dame in that game back in week 1, which again, Notre Dame fans would like to tell you, it doesn't really matter that much. Does it matter the fact that Miami is now 6-0 against ranked teams this year to Notre Dame's 2-2? And by the way, Notre Dame's 2 wins came against USC, good team, but just lost to TCU in their bowl game. And obviously they beat Pitt, who Miami housed. I mean, both Miami and Notre Dame destroyed Pitt, so doesn't really matter. That's a wash. Tiebreaker goes to, and we see this in sports all the time, first tiebreaker goes to who won head-to-head? Hurricanes did. Hurricanes pushed the Notre Dame all over the field. Now, if you want to have the conversation about Notre Dame should have been in the playoffs because we shouldn't have had Tulane and James Madison, I'm all here for that discussion. I think we should have a scenario in which we do have the best 12 teams in college football, and by that definition, Notre Dame would have been one of my 12 best teams. I think they should have gotten the playoff. I wish our debate could have been for that last spot. BYU, Texas, Vanderbilt. Like, that would have been a fun back and forth. But the way the playoff structure is now, the fact that this is not the 14 playoff of years past. This is not 2023 where I think most people who watch the games realize, yeah, Alabama was better than Florida State 2 years ago. But Florida State's like, gosh darn it, man, we went undefeated and won the ACC. What do you want us to do? It's like, I kind of see that point. Like, you literally won every single game you played and you still didn't get in. In the modern day, though, in the 12-team playoff, I got no sympathy for you. You didn't take care of the games you were supposed to. Notre Dame is now a school that is, USC removes them from their schedule. Notre Dame's trying to look for this special treatment where it's like, gosh darn it, man, join a conference. It's 2026. Join a conference. The world's changed. Okay, the conference realignment, NIL transfer portal, it's a new day in college football. Adjust to that. Miami did. Miami brought in Carson Beck, who has been far from special, but has been a good game manager type of guy in their 2 playoff wins against Texas A&M on the road, by the way, and then against Ohio State. Mario Cristobal talked after the game. He actually gave a shout out to Jimmy Johnson, who was on the field. They won the game in Dallas, so Jimmy Johnson was there. Michael Irvin was there. Of course, Michael Irvin was there, and it was hyped beyond hyped, as you might imagine, playmaker might be. But Mario Cristobal, after Miami got the W against Ohio State.
Well, first, thanks to God, the big guy upstairs, man, always number 1. We talked about it, right? Our guys have really worked hard at being a physical, violent bunch. And you know what? Coach Johnson, There you go, brother. There you go. Green Tree practice field. Let's go. Wait for me. Don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave. I just think it's look at it, man. These guys, you've been down there. You see how we work, how we practice, and they just kind of got tired of hearing how everybody. We're focused on us.
I mean, you kind of saw him like going back and forth, like, we really care what people. We're just worried about the Miami Hurricanes. Like, of course, those Miami kids are human. They have social media. They have TVs. They see what people are saying about them. They see the Notre Dame homers and people who are, traditionalists say Notre Dame should have got in because they beat who? USC. I thought USC was pretty good this year, but that's it. Miami beat both, Notre Dame and, who was the second? Oh, sorry, I was thinking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost to Miami, and then they lost to Texas A&M. They lost to two teams in their weight class. What do you want me to do? By the way, the Notre Dame loss came at home. The A&M loss came at home in week, I guess that was week 3. But you look at Miami again. What did they do? Beat up Ohio State. It's one thing to do it against the Fighting Irish. One thing to do it against the defending national champion Buckeyes. Beat them up at the line of scrimmage. Rushed for over 100 yards more than the Buckeyes did. And a lot of that was because Ohio State was trailing throughout most of the game. From like late first half on was 14-zip. But isn't that football in its purest form? Moving another grown man against his will? That's what Miami does better than any team I think left in this tournament. Whether they win the national championship, we'll see. But I mean, again, you even look at the other day. 2 sacks for Ohio State, 5 for Miami. Like that's what they do. That's what they are. They play mistake-free football by and large. Their line play is off the charts. ACC, fix your tie-breaking scenarios if this team doesn't get into the conference championship game over Virginia and Duke. Like that's a broken system as far as I'm concerned. But kudos to Hurricanes. Listen, as for Ohio State, look, it isn't a good look, especially as the defending national champions who, it's funny, this year is literally the reverse of last year for the Buckeyes. Last year, we saw the talent there. That went without saying. You go to that game at home, horseshoe against Michigan. We're like, okay, Ohio State's going to blow them out. They're going to win the Big Ten championship game. They'll be the 1 or 2 seed. And how did they lose to Michigan? We're calling for Ryan Day's job. And then they blow the doors off Tennessee and really blow the doors off Oregon in the Rose Bowl, the number 1 seed Oregon. Beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl and then get a W against Notre Dame in the national championship game. This year, opposite. They faced little to no adversity. Toughest game they played was either Texas in week 1 in Arch Manning's first major college start, or last week of the season against Michigan. Got the monkey at their back, Ryan Day did at least, by beating the Wolverines. Then they lose the Big Ten championship game to Indiana, and then, of course, lose their first playoff game to Miami. By the way, bold first-round bye teams, 1-7 thus far in the new 12-team playoff. Indiana's the only exception to that rule. Shows you how good the Hoosiers are and how well coached they are. No question about that. But I think if you're Ohio State, first of all, why is Ryan Day calling plays? I get Brian Hartline is leaving the program. Bro, he's been your offensive coordinator at this point. Hasn't hurt you too bad. Like, continue to roll with what got you there. Continue to force feed the ball to Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and others. They couldn't finish, drives when they did get into Miami territory, missed field goals. Like, it was an undisciplined performance by the Buckeyes. And also, too, listen, the good news is for Ohio State is that they've got a young quarterback. And young quarterbacks against the elite defenses with future NFL players, unless we're talking about a generational talent, they can struggle. This is Julian Sayin in his first 12 games and then the last 2 games against Indiana and against Miami. Regular season, 35 touchdowns, 5 picks, and he's a Heisman finalist for a reason. 81% completion, 255 yards, 92.1 QBR, and of course, 12-0. Postseason, not the same player. When you're facing better competition, more picks than touchdowns. Completion percentage goes from basically 82 to 67. Pass yards per game goes up because they're asking you to throw the ball more because you're trailing. And then QBR plummets from 92 to 65. And again, he lost both games. Like, get another year of Julian Sayin. Hopefully Ryan Day makes a good decision in terms of hiring a new offensive coordinator. Did a good job in replacing Jim Knowles, Matt Patricia. Listen, they didn't lose that game. Ohio State didn't lose that game because of their defense. You got to realize 7 of Miami's 24 came on a pick 6 by Julian Sayin. Like that, Ohio State kind of beat themselves offensively. Couldn't make field goals. And against a team like Miami, 2 teams who've got future NFL players all the way across the board, it's the margins where these games are decided. And special teams can do that. You saw that yesterday with Ole Miss. Ohio State couldn't take advantage of those opportunities. So that's what I think we saw in the Cotton Bowl. Patrick. Ohio State starting slow doomed them. Pick 6 and missed field goals to end the first half was too much ground to cover. Much as I hate Miami, they got their swagger back. Yeah, Patrick is a Florida State guy, so yeah, he definitely hates Miami quite a bit. Then he says, oh, no. I see what you did there. No, surely missed Chip Kelly. Defense held up, but the offense failed them in a bad way. Ohio State's talent carried Ryan Day to the championship this time around. Didn't look ready to go by any means. Michigan will redeem themselves with Kyle Whittingham leading the way. I really like the hire by Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. I thought he was a great coach at Utah. I think that's, especially after the disaster off the field with the Sherrone Moore situation, I think you need an adult in the room, and I think Kyle Whittingham is exactly that. I think you're seeing a little bit of a trend. Actually, before we get to that, quickly, almost forgot. Carving Up merchandise. We got merch on the website. We got hoodies. I wore a hoodie on the show on Monday. We got hoodies, t-shirts, hats. We've got teddy bears. We got mugs, blankets, anything that you can possibly imagine as it relates to merchandise. We've got Carving Up merch. So right up there, check out that QR code, scan it. Go to the website, check out Carving Up merch. Also, Grid Network merch. If you look up and down the website for other shows, All Even Podcast, I believe Boston Sports Summit. We got all kinds of stuff on there. So check it out. Carving Up merch and Grid Network merch on our website. Definitely would appreciate if you check that out. We've got, again, hoodies, t-shirts, anything that you could possibly find as it relates to merchandise. We got that on the Carving Up store. So definitely check out the QR code. One more time, check out the QR code to see what we've got. What I was going to say, though, was I think you do see a trend in the final 4 teams in the playoff. Is teams that can beat you up at the line of scrimmage. In a weird way, in the modern era of college football, on the field, it's kind of gone back to the way it was about 15, 20 years ago. Where, don't get me wrong, quarterback play matters. The best 2 quarterbacks of the country, maybe the best 3, are in the semifinal. Mendoza, Dante Moore, and potentially one of the top 3, Trinidad Chambliss. But up front is where those teams can get you. Ole Miss is kind of the exception to that rule. Ole Miss is just going to outscore you. They're kind of like a classic Big 12 team from about a decade ago. But Oregon, physical at the line of scrimmage. The same thing could be said about Indiana. The same thing could be said about Miami. It's kind of who can beat you up at the line of scrimmage, who can be able to win at the point of attack, and that's ultimately who's won these games. Texas Tech has done that all season long. The difference is Texas Tech doesn't have close to the offense, or at least as high of a ceiling of offensive caliber guys as Oregon has. And that's why you saw Oregon win that game yesterday in the Orange Bowl, 23-0. Listen, Texas Tech had their opportunities. They got down the red zone. The kid for Oregon, I think he was a freshman, had a couple of interceptions, a really impressive performance by the Ducks. And again, it's a team that can beat you in a multitude of different ways. I picked Texas Tech to win this game because I thought their defense was as good as you could see in college football. The fact they dominated BYU the way that they did twice, the best team outside of, obviously, the Red Raiders in the Big 12. Oregon, though, it's hey, we come from the best conference in college football. Only loss came to Indiana. We've competed against Ohio. We beat Ohio State last year, albeit with some different players. Got to upgrade at quarterback from Dylan Gabriel to Dante Moore. You got a playmaker at that position. And it was just kind of like a methodical. You could tell in the play calling, you could tell Dan Lanning and his staff were okay, early on, they're not moving the football. You could tell early on. It was it 6-0 at halftime or something like that in favor of the Ducks? It's Texas Tech is missing field goals. This is going to be a little bit of a defensive struggle where points are going to be at a premium. We just got to kind of take them where we can get them. So let's play conservative. Texas Tech is going to make some mistakes, take advantage of those on short fields. Even when Texas Tech gets to the red zone, pick off a pass in the end zone to pretty much wrap up the game for all intents and purposes and win the way that we can do so there. And Dan Lanning will play the soundbite. He even talked about it, after the game, that a lot of people who are box score watchers look at, hey, wait a second, they gave up 34 to James Madison. Yeah, because he took the foot off the gas pedal. That's why they gave up 34 to James Madison. Dan Lanning kind of talked about that after the game.
Man, it was a lot of fun. Last week a lot of people talked about our defense. They showed up today, right? Hold them to 0. It's a really good offense. It's a really good team that we just got to play. And our guys went out there and they just played the next play, played the next play, played the next play. They got in the red area, we played the next play, right? Offense just kept punching and punching. We out-physicaled them there at the end, and that's where it needed to show up.
Again, 28 of James Madison's points last week came in the second half. The game was over. I use the analogy of, when I was a youngster playing middle school basketball. Let's just say we played a team that was the state champions. I don't know who scheduled that for us, but they full court pressed us for literally the first minute of the game. I think it was 20-0 after about 55 seconds. And then they ended up scoring 86 the rest of the game. It's like 20 points the first minute, 66 for the last, whatever it was, 23. It's like they took their foot off the gas. They'd won the game in the first minute. That's how it felt with Oregon last week against James Madison. But again, like when you are Oregon, when you are Phil Knight obviously has a lot of, control with that. And not Phil Knight, it was Phil Knight. Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike. When you have all of the NIL money that they have, all the money Oregon's got, we see the flashy uniforms and whatnot, but this is Dan Lanning who comes from the SEC. It's kind of the old school SEC where it's hit you in the mouth, play physical football. And Oregon used to be kind of a finesse team. Not anymore. Those days are gone. This is a new day, for the Ducks. And listen, it's a program that is pretty consistently underachieved in the biggest spots. I mean, last year, number 1 seed, Rose Bowl, and just get clocked by by Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Upgrade at quarterback, bring in Dante Moore, who is a highly touted, recruiting prospect. Good running game. Again, you're seeing a theme with all the 4 teams left in the playoff, with the exception of Ole Miss, who will just outscore you. Is good O-line, good D-line, playmaker at quarterback. In the case of Miami, more of a game manager at quarterback and Carson Beck. Like these are the 4 best teams we got. If you inserted Georgia in place of Ole Miss, like Georgia feels like they were the best team left out of the semifinals. So I can't wait. But again, next week is when the games are. So Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern, Miami against Ole Miss. Miami is a 3.5-point favorite in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. And then the next day on Friday, it will be Oregon versus Indiana. That'll be at 7:30 on ESPN. That's going to be next week. And then the national championship game will be on January 19th. And that'll, by the way, come after the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. So can you imagine that week's of shows? Oh my gosh. To quote the Harbaugh brothers loosely, nobody's got it better than us on this show. Let's move, though, to the NFL for a second. Or really for the rest of the show, but a segment we do every week, usually on Wednesday, but Wednesday was New Year's Eve. We did a New Year's special, my top 10 moments of the world of sports. If you haven't seen that, don't leave the show quite yet, but when you get a chance, it's on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, my top 10 moments in the world of sports in 2025. Hopefully we'll have even better ones this year in 2026. But I do a segment every Wednesday. It's called Carving Up the Context. Essentially, I look at a story. I look at a discussion. Sometimes it's not even in sports. It can be in entertainment, maybe, and in politics sometimes. More often than not, 80% of the time it's sports. Look at a story and dive just a little bit deeper into the context of why we are at where we're at, or what the position I have regarding the issue. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." This week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I did want to talk about the MVP race between Matthew Stafford and Drake Maye. So it's a 2-man race. If you had to ask me to vote today, it would be between those two, and I'll tell you who in just a moment. And then it would be Myles Garrett in that Christian McCaffrey in that number 3 spot. Myles Garrett, if he breaks the sack record, which, spoiler, I think he will on Sunday against Cincinnati. And then that 5 spot, honestly, the best quarterback since Thanksgiving, Trevor Lawrence. He's been nothing short of sensational. He's first in virtually every major statistical category, since Thanksgiving. So I would give it to him. But what I would also say is this, when it comes to the Matthew Stafford and Drake Maye debate, is that I think it's Stafford. But before I detail why, let's show 2, pro Drake Maye graphics. So let's show, do we have the tail of the tape between Maye and Stafford? Because you look at this just on its face, like, oh, Drake Maye's clearly the MVP. Stafford's got 8 more total touchdowns than Drake. Again, we factored in Drake's rushing touchdowns into this discussion. Otherwise, the gap would be bigger. The same number of picks. Drake averages about 11 more total yards per game, again, because of his legs. Completion percentage is much better, 71-65. Passer rating, 112-108. QBR, 76-70. And record, of course, 13-3 to Stafford's 11-5. And then you also look at the fact, you got to look a little bit deeper than just stats, of course. Otherwise, Joe Burrow probably would have won league MVP last year despite not making the playoffs. We got to look a little bit deeper than just the box score. What were these two against the same opponents, against common opponents, which this year, if memory serves me correctly, it was the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, and the entire NFC South. Show those numbers between the two because Drake beat Stafford there too. Total touchdowns the same, 14 all. Drake had fewer turnovers, way more yards per game. Completion percentage 70 to 67. Pass rating much better, 117 to 107. QBR 77 to 65. Record 6-0 versus 4-2. This is their numbers, Maye and Stafford against common opponents. So when the same teams, which again are Baltimore, Tennessee, and the NFC South. With that being said, because another case for Maye would be he's working with less offensive talent. Matt Stafford gets Puka Nacua, and for large chunks of the season, he gets Devontae Adams and Kyron Williams and Sean McVay's his play caller, although Josh McDaniels isn't too shabby either as an OC. Regardless, the raw talent on the field on Stafford's side of the ball, rather than Drake Maye's, favors Matt Stafford. However, and Patriots fans are going to be so pissed at me for this, but this stuff matters in the discussion. Against the big dogs, how did you fare? Well, the fact of the matter is, again, Drake Maye, and we'll get into this, really didn't play that many big dogs, didn't really play that many playoff teams. Stafford did, and Stafford was better against playoff teams than Drake Maye was. Like, it's not even close. 2 games against playoff teams, which were both against Buffalo. 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. 241 yards, 67% completion, 84 rating, 68 QBR, 1-1 record. Like, okay. Stafford, 20-1 touchdown to interception ratio against playoff teams. Beats them by a mile in yards. Beats them by a mile in passer rating, 109 to 84. Beats them in QBR, 71 to 68, and 4-3 record. By the way, some of those losses, like the one a couple weeks ago against Seattle, Stafford was nothing short of phenomenal. Is that if Stafford, and this to me is the kind of the unfair aspect, not, again, the games matter. You heard me talk about that with Miami and Notre Dame earlier, and all month, basically, or all of last month. But because Matt Stafford has a poor game against the Atlanta Falcons, a team that's out of the playoffs, when, let's be honest, the Rams' position in the postseason is all but locked as at best the 5 seed, at worst the 6 seed, tomato, as far as I'm concerned. That takes him from, in Vegas, overwhelming favorite to nip and tuck underdog. It was that bad? I'm not going to act like Stafford played well. I'm not going to act like the Rams got in that game in large part because of a blocked field goal returned by Jared Verse for a touchdown. But that bad? I think cumulatively over the course of an NFL season, because these are all professionals, it's not like college football where you mostly play easy opponents early, although that's changing now, thankfully. A Week 17 game, to me, should hold the same weight as a Week 7 game. Especially if you're the Rams, and that game, by and large, kind of meant nothing. It did. If they win, they have an outside shot at the 5 seed. If they lose, which they did, they're locked into the 6. Can't fall to 7, can't move to 5, can't win the division. Like that's the reality where we're at the Rams. Also, another component onto this, because we talk about, folks have said, the Patriots schedule is easy. To me, that is not an excuse for why, then the Patriots are kind of fraudulent. The schedule's easy. It's the worst strength of schedule in the entire NFL do the New England Patriots have. Assuming they beat Miami on Sunday, they'll be 14-3. Like, they're just an asterisk because it was easy. It does matter in the MVP race, however, when not only do the Rams play the hardest strength of schedule this year, and the Patriots play the worst strength of schedule this year. Literally, Rams number 1, Patriots 32 in terms of strength of schedule. It's 2 other components. Did you know, since the merger, and anytime you bring out since the merger stats, it's like, you're digging into the annals of NFL history. The New England Patriots, if we can pull this up here, have the 8th weakest strength of schedule in NFL history since the merger. The 8th weakest in NFL history. With that being said, if you look at the 8 teams, I'm trying to pull up my on my phone here because it wasn't able to give. Okay, here we go. So again, I wish we had a graphic. Maybe we'll put it on YouTube later. 8 easiest schedules in the history of the NFL. From 8 to 5. The 2025 Patriots, 75 Rams, 79 Bucks, 72 Dolphins, who we all know went undefeated, 70 Colts, 99 Rams, who won the Super Bowl, 70 Dolphins, and 75 Vikings. Now, the good news is for Drake Maye, 2 of those teams had the league MVP. Minnesota Vikings in 1975 with Fran Tarkenton, and the St. Louis Rams in 1999 with Kurt Warner. So there would be precedent for Drake Maye to win this award. And again, me doing this is not to say, oh, Stafford's the clear and obvious favorite. It's to say, number one, Stafford, it would be my pick. And number 2, this idea that because of one bad game against Atlanta, the gap is just gigantic is insanity. And forget just record. Because we look at, the teams that you play. Well, what are those teams good at? Not only do the Patriots play bad teams, and sometimes it coincides, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, the Cowboys were an average team. The Bengals were a below average team. Both had the worst defenses of football, but they're not bad teams, in large part because of their quarterbacks. The New England Patriots played the single, cumulatively, the single, we can show the numbers, worst pass defense in the entire NFL. If you look at the breadth of their schedule, the Rams played the 3rd best pass defense, cumulatively in terms of their schedule of the NFL this season. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, again, I showed you 2 pro Drake Maye graphics earlier. If you just want to look at raw numbers, it's Drake Maye. If you want to look at common opponents, it's Drake Maye. Against playoff teams, it's Stafford by a mile. Strength of schedule, Stafford by a mile. Defenses you face, Stafford by a country mile. Keep in mind the fact that Stafford, before the season, we weren't sure when he was going to be available. Remember that story in training camp? And stories matter. Fair or unfair, stories matter. The MVP kind of helped Josh Allen last year because Lamar's won. I would have voted Josh Allen, but it's Lamar's won it twice. I know it's the best year of Lamar's career, but Josh never won it. Mahomes has won twice. Lamar's won twice. Got to give one to Josh. Fair or unfair, we can have that discussion. That factors in. Narratively speaking, Matt Stafford was supposed to be this old man going into what is for Stafford, year 17, 37 years old. Not sure if he's ready to go, and then hits the ground running. That stuff matters. And so in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, if they give MVP to Drake Maye, I'll have no problem with it whatsoever. None. Either of these 2 will be a very deserving MVP. What I have a problem with, though, is that there's this discussion that coming into last week, Stafford was the head and shoulders favorite in Vegas. And because of one bad game that the Rams did not need at all, he's now the underdog. I mean, you'd have thought he threw for 100 yards and 5 picks like he was like Nathan Peterman or something. No offense to Nathan Peterman. It was bad. It wasn't atrocious. I would give Stafford the MVP today. Got some comments from Patrick. Stafford played a tougher degree of difficulty and playing in the toughest division in the NFL, where 3 teams have better winning records than teams in a weak AFC East. The Rams will likely play Philly in an early season rematch which I wholeheartedly believe LA will get their revenge. I tend to lean in that direction as well, Patrick, if that comes to pass. He says this is a 2017 MVP race between Carson Wentz and Tom Brady. Wentz was on his way to likely winning before the ACL injury. Brady won it and still got to a Super Bowl. I don't think it necessarily applies in that situation because you had a guy who was literally going to win, who was the runaway favorite, and then he goes down for the year in December. Both guys are healthy, thank God. Knock on wood, that continues. Stafford and Drake Maye. But it wasn't like there was this huge gap, and then the gap closed, and matter of fact, the second place guy surpassed the first place guy because of an injury. It was because of one bad game. And you say, well, in that same week, Drake Maye threw 5 touchdowns against the Jets. I get that. My argument, a Week 17 game in which neither team needs to win. The Patriots did win and got the division because of Buffalo's loss later that day, but the Patriots were going to win the division. We all knew that. They could beat the Jets with their backups. The Jets got their JV squad out there. A Week 17 game, which neither team necessarily has to win, especially the Rams, should hold the same weight as a Week 7 game or Week 5 game, whichever you prefer. Is that in the biggest spots? Last big game for the Rams, in which they had a chance to put a stranglehold in the NFC West and get the 1 seed. Stafford threw for 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, he was outstanding in that game against a great Seattle defense. I'll tell you this. I hope we get a rematch between Seattle and the Rams. That would be phenomenal. All right. Before we go to break, I did want to do Bryson's best 10. So I need to just get this graphic up here. Again, we've got so many graphics that I've used on the show today that it's like overflowing. So we have to like delete some, put others in here. So let me get the Bryson's best 10 graphic on. We're not going to do all 10 in a big long segment because that would take quite a long time if we have it right here. Okay. So didn't do Bryson's best 10 last week because of, situation going on in my personal life. Didn't do it on Wednesday because of New Year's Eve. Here's what I've got going in the final week of the regular season. So Seattle stays that 1 spot. Again, I had them as number 1 after that big-time win against the Rams. They crushed Carolina despite the kind of mediocre performance from their offense from Sam Darnold. Patriots move up 2 spots. I just think the fact that Drake Maye is playing his best ball. Again, the Jets are probably the worst team in football. It's either them or the Raiders at this particular point in time. But if you're New England, taking care of business, winning the games you're supposed to win, let's see what you do against the bigger and badder competition. I think they've got an opportunity to go on a deep playoff run. The Jaguars, ladies and gentlemen, as my 3 team. Let's just put this in perspective. Jacksonville is on a 7-game winning streak? Jacksonville is on tap to potentially win the AFC South. We'll give kind of the playoff scenarios in a few minutes here on the show. Jacksonville has a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who I don't know if you've heard has quite simply been the best quarterback in the National Football League post-Thanksgiving. And in the 7-game winning streak for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 in total touchdowns, 21. According to Pro Football Focus, by the way, 3rd in yards per pass, tied for 2nd in Pro Football Focus grade, 91.2 to be exact, and 2nd, according to PFF, in big-time throws with 17. Jacksonville's a legit Super Bowl contender. Rams fell 2 spots to 4. Again, they had to drop because they've lost 2 in a row. They didn't need that game whatsoever. I think if the Rams go into that game with the win against Seattle, if they had beaten Seattle, taking care of the job, I think they beat Atlanta. And then they beat Arizona this weekend, and then now all of a sudden they're the 1 seed. Like, the approach was completely different based on the circumstances. Now you could say that's a knock on McVay, that's a knock on the team. Fair enough, but I think that's the reality of where we find ourselves at. The Rams fall 2 spots. Niners move up 3. Again, I have a lot of concerns about that defense, man. They are dead last in the NFL in sacks. Obviously, that has a lot to do with Nick Bosa's injury. Fred Warner hasn't been there for most of the season. But Brock Purdy, and I have been a Brock Purdy skeptic to say the very least. And Purdy stands are coming at me on social media for saying he's always been this good. Well, no, not necessarily. We've seen Purdy trailing in the second half of games in his career, and his passer rating is in the 70s. He's not that good in those situations. But 10 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, that's got to count for something. Winning a shootout against the Chicago Bears, you see I have at my number 6 spot. That's impressive. No George Kittle in that game for a majority. Like, that matters. To come back from a pick 6 early, kudos to Brock Purdy. Bears fall 3 spots to 6. Again, a lot of this, it's not because I don't like the Bears, just because I like some of these teams better than Chicago. Caleb Williams is playing his best ball. They've run the football effectively. I need to see a little bit more from their defense, especially getting Jalen Johnson, Tremaine Edmonds back. Dennis Allen's a good defensive coordinator. We'll see how they bounce back against Detroit and in the playoffs. Denver falls a spot to 7. I mean, like, can we go over again the quarterbacks that the Broncos have beaten this year? Because I'm sorry, folks, this matters. And this is to me the most fraudulent number 1 seed in the NFL that we've seen since the Tennessee Titans back in 2021. Remember when Tennessee got the 1 seed, Derrick Henry was out, and we're like, not sure if necessarily buy this team. And then Joe Burrow in Cincinnati comes in. It's like, oh yeah, that's why we didn't buy the team. So for Denver, these are the quarterbacks they've beaten this season. Cam Ward in his first ever start. Daniel Jones. Or sorry, they didn't beat Daniel Jones. They lost Daniel Jones. Jake Browning, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Jackson Dart, in which they needed one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history to win that game at home. Dak Prescott, Stroud, but Stroud got hurt in that game, so Davis Mills, Geno Smith, Patrick Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith / Kenny Pickett, Jordan Love, They got boat raced by Trevor Lawrence in their own building, and then they beat Chris Oludekun by 7 in Kansas City with the Chiefs having Jack Diddley to play for as a double-digit favorite when you're trying to maintain the division in the 1 seed. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you have to fall. This isn't a power rankings. This is why I hate power rankings. Hate power rankings. Who's the best record? And let's just rank them from there. Any old Joe Schmo off the street can do that. Do you watch the games? How are they performing? So Denver falls a spot on this list. Philadelphia moves up a spot. Listen, their defense is outstanding. Their offense is just, man, it's an enigma. I mean, this is a Kevin Patullo issue. Guys aren't being schemed open, and that matters. Jalen Hurts has, even when they weren't open against Buffalo, Jalen Hurts was making some big-time throws in the first half of that game. The offense just goes bye-bye in the second half. It's a really weird team. Houston moves up a spot, taking care of business on the road against the Chargers. It was an impressive win, holding Herbert and LA to 16 points. I really don't trust that offense. I think that's going to be what bites them in the playoffs. But Houston, with that best defensive football, has to move up a spot. Buffalo moves down 3. The only reason they're in the top 10 is because of Josh Allen, although the Bills' defense has shown up and shown out. And again, I said it on Monday. People dragging me on social media for it, but I stand by it. Like, Josh is one of the greatest talents we've ever seen at the quarterback position in the history of the game. In the history of the game. With the exception of 2021, in that playoff game against Kansas City, in which he was out of this world great. He's not made the winning plays when it matters in the postseason. He simply hasn't. Last 2 years, he's had the ball in his hands, down 3, chance to go tie or take the lead against Kansas City, and came up empty twice. 2023, third down, misses Stephon Diggs open for what would have been a first down before the Tyler Bass missed kick. And last year, down 3, fourth quarter, 3 minutes to go, chance to go tie or take the lead, and Buffalo got 1 first down. And oddly enough, and again, people think I hate Josh Allen. I don't. I think Josh is, without question, a top 2 quarterback in the game. But I feel like in a very strange roundabout way, Josh Allen is who Mahomes' haters say Mahomes is. Where it's, Josh has 1 game. I have never seen a quarterback like this in the history of my life. I just falling over backwards. We've never seen a player play the position better than Josh Allen. Every single time he has a big game. Which Mahomes' haters say, oh, Mahomes gets glazed by Collinsworth and all these people. Number 2 is he's consistently, because of that, referred to as the best quarterback in the NFL, despite fewer MVPs than both Mahomes and Lamar, and no Super Bowl appearances, 2 FC Championship game appearances. Number 3, he's a flop artist extraordinaire. I mean, I talked about that when they played Kansas City. We saw that in Philadelphia, which goes to my number 4 point, is that complains to the refs incessantly. Not like Luka Doncic bad, but you saw him get a fumble force against Philadelphia. His big offensive lineman, Deion Dawkins, is sprinting for the football that's out and about near midfield. Josh is yelling at the ref. Like, that is a Luka Doncic-like move. Like, that's the stuff they accuse Mahomes of doing. Games are rigged for the Chiefs and Mahomes. Josh Allen beats him by a mile in terms of roughing the passer penalties. And a large part of that because of flops. Remember last year in the playoffs, a referee, I think it was, I almost said Clete Blakeman. It wasn't him. I'm forgetting the guy's name. He refs a lot of big games. His name's escaping me. I think he was the ref for the Rams and Saints NFC Championship game. His name escapes me. Remember he goes to Josh Allen on the sideline after, I forget if they missed a roughing the passer or something, and apologized to him in the middle of the game on the Bills sideline? So I maintain, Josh Allen, as sensational as he is who Patrick Mahomes' haters say that Mahomes is. And I rest my case. We will take a 1-minute break on the show, but when we come back, one of my favorite segments to do of the year, playoff scenarios followed by predictions, my predictions based on how I think the playoffs will look. Come back with all that. It's just a jam-packed segment in 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Friday. And again, this is quite simply one of my favorite 6 segments to do all year. Is that, and make sure you got this right. Okay. Is that when you have the playoffs coming up, we're going to week 18, the playoff scenarios. This is the strange year in which there's nobody competing for wild card spots. Again, as I said earlier in the show, NFC, the 3 wild card teams are set, where it's second place in the NFC West, the Rams or Niners, I guess, second, third in the NFC West, and then the Packers. And on the AFC side of the bracket, it's Buffalo, Houston, and the Chargers. A few divisions still to be decided. The 1 seed in both conferences to be decided. In the case of the NFC, the 1 seed will be decided in addition to the division between Seattle and San Francisco. Before we get to those games, let's real quick, and we won't do it fast because there's minimal stakes other than draft positioning in the first games. Let me go ahead and predict the games that have absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the NFL playoffs. So get the background music going. Let's predict those games first before we get to the playoffs. All right. So we will start. What do we got first? We will start in the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys going to East Rutherford, New Jersey to take on the New York Football Giants. Dallas is a 3.5-point favorite. Reports are that Dak Prescott is going to play, but not play the entire game. We could see some Joe Milton action, which as a Balls fan, I'm always here to see. I want to see Joe, throw it all over the field. He's got the best arm in the league, arguably. Listen, y'all know the stat, and I've given it ad nauseum on the show. But the Rain Dakota Prescott has not lost to the New York Giants since week 14 of the 2016 season. Do I really think he gets the Giants? The 3-win, good-for-nothing Giants. That streak's going to end. No chance. Give me the Dallas Cowboys to win this game, 31-24 over New York. Again, a lot of this is going to depend on how much Dak plays, how much action Joe Milton gets, but I think Dallas's offense is going to look to make one more statement on the year. Cowboys 34, Giants 24 in this matchup. AFC North matchup. As far as it matters for draft positioning, because these are 2 non-playoff teams, but we can see history in this next matchup. Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati in this game, I believe, is favored by 7. Yes, they are. So Myles Garrett can break the sack record. He's 1 sack away from breaking the record. I think he's going to do it. Against that Cincinnati O-line, Joe Burrow, I think Joe Burrow's the type of guy, unlike some other quarterback I know that plays in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's the type of guy where I don't want to get sacked by Myles Garrett, but if I'm not going to go out of my way to tank the offense, so that I avoid getting brought to the ground by number 95. So I think Joe Burrow's the type of guy that's like, okay, the play's dead, take the sack, move on to live, see another play, and Myles Garrett will make history. Other than that, Shedeur Sanders has struggled a little bit. I think he'll make some plays against a bad Bengals defense, but there's no team better than a late season Cincinnati team that either has nothing to play for or is scratching calling just to be the 7 seed. Give me the Bengals in the spot 26-17 over the Cleveland Browns. It is now time for Bryson's Bleak Bet. 1 game each and every week that I've absolutely zero confidence in predicting. But hey, you gotta predict them all. NFC North. It's the Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota is an 8.5-point favorite in this game. So Green Bay's in the playoffs, but they're locked into the 7. That loss to Baltimore, they cannot move higher. They're locked in, so they're going to sit. According to Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love could play if the game mattered this week, but he's sitting him. Malik Willis is also going to sit for this game, and he got hurt late in that game last week. So there's going to be Clayton Tune, who's a Madden Ultimate Team rookie mode, star, or at least starter pack guy. You see him in the preseason here and there. That's about it. It's the first start of his NFL career. Hoping the kid plays pretty well. J.J. McCarthy is back from Minnesota, and for all his faults, he is better than Max Brosmer. It's at home, Minnesota. Vikings have played well the last month or so. I think the Vikings will win this game. I'm not terribly confident in this game. At -8.5, Vikings 20, Packers 6, as Minnesota, has the type of season that Pittsburgh always wants to have, and that's 9-8. And finally, before we get to the games that matter, AFC West, Kansas City Chiefs and Las Vegas Raiders from Sin City. The Chiefs are favored in this game, -5.5. So it actually came out before the show started today. Geno Smith is going to be held out of this game, which I presume means we're going to get some Kenny Pickett action. Listen, the Raiders know. The Raiders are not dummies. Whether Pete Carroll's back or not, only time will tell. We might find that out as soon as Monday. But the fact of the matter is, they have an opportunity to get the number 1 pick in the draft. They ain't missing that. Whether it's Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore, they can decide that later. But it is in their control. Lose this game, finish 2-15, and get number 1 overall pick in Pittsburgh in the 2026 draft in 3.5 months. As for Kansas City, are they a mess offensively without Mahomes? Yeah. But you're facing a team that is trying to lose. So therefore, I'm going to take Kansas City to win this game. I'll take Vegas plus 5.5 because the Chiefs couldn't blow anybody out with Mahomes. They darn sure can't do it, without Mahomes and Gardner Minshew. Could be the last game of Travis Kelce's career, by the way, which is kind of a bummer. I hate seeing one of the greatest players in the history of the league go out playing meaningless football. But I will take the Raiders plus 5.5, 17-14 over the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, again, want to predict the games that mean nothing before we get to the ones that do. So, as we know, when you talk about the NFL playoff format and scenarios and things of that nature, a lot of things could take place. Get the background music going, and let's talk about all the ones that could very well take place. Here we go. Okay, so before we get to any games, let's start with playoff scenarios. We will start first in the NFC, then go to the AFC. In the NFC South, the division likely will be decided. There's some caveats, which we'll talk about. Likely will be decided tomorrow afternoon in Tampa Bay between the Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the Carolina Panthers, they have one path, or two paths rather, to clinch the NFC South. It is win or tie against the Buccaneers. They can still clinch the NFC South. If the Atlanta Falcons lose or tie the New Orleans Saints. The Tampa Bay Bucs, though, have one way and one way only to win the NFC South and avoid a disastrous collapse. Beat the Carolina Panthers tomorrow and hope that the Atlanta Falcons lose or tie the New Orleans Saints. It's that simple. Carolina wins, they're in. If Atlanta beats New Orleans, they get in too. For the Bucs, got to beat the Panthers, hope for a Falcons loss. In the NFC West, not only will the NFC West be decided, the number 1 seed in the conference and home field advantage throughout the playoffs will be decided. The NFC will run through either Seattle or it will run through San Francisco, who, by the way, happens to host Super Bowl 60 this year. Speaking of which, the 49ers, they have one path and one path only to clinch the NFC West and the conference's number 1 seed. Beat the Seattle Seahawks. It's that simple. No ties, no losses, no other team. Beat the Seahawks. And they would be the number 1 seed in the NFC West champion. For the Seahawks, they have one path and one path only to clinch the NFC West and the NFC's number 1 seed. Win or tie the San Francisco 49ers. So if we see a situation where this game goes to overtime, Seattle is better off with a tie than with a loss. They tie the Niners, NFC West champions, number 1 seed. Now let's move to the AFC South, where the Houston Texans have one path and one path only to win the division. They have to beat the Indianapolis Colts, and they have to hope that the Jacksonville Jaguars lose to the Tennessee Titans. There is no other way that the Texans can win the AFC South but this scenario. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have multiple ways to win the AFC South. They have one path and one path only to still get the 1 seed in the AFC. To get the 1 seed in the AFC, they have to beat the Tennessee Titans, hope the Broncos lose to the Chargers, and hope the Patriots lose to the Miami Dolphins. If that happens, Jacksonville will be the number 1 seed. But more realistically, they have 2 paths to get the AFC South title. Win or tie against the Titans, or the Texans have to lose or tie the Colts. If either of those 2 scenarios happen, Jacksonville is the AFC South champion. For the New England Patriots, they've already wrapped up the AFC East, but to get the number 1 seed in the conference, they have 2 paths to get there. The first one is most simple. Beat the Miami Dolphins and then hope for the Broncos to lose or tie the LA Chargers. They could also get the 1 seed if they tie the Dolphins and the Broncos lose to the Chargers. For the Denver Broncos, they have multiple paths to get the 1 seed. They're in the catbird seat. They're in good position here. The simplest and clearest path for them to get the 1 seed, beat the Los Angeles Chargers. It's that simple. Beat the LA Chargers. The second path to get there, tie the Los Angeles Chargers, and then hope for a Patriots loss or tie. They could still be the 1 seed, however, ladies and gentlemen. If the Patriots lose and the Jacksonville Jaguars lose or tie against the Tennessee Titans, if either of those 3 scenarios happens, the Denver Broncos will be the number 1 seed in the AFC. And to the simplest one, the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens clinch the AFC North. They have one path and one path only to get there. Beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's it. That's the only way Baltimore can get in as the 4th seed and the AFC North champion. For my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers, we have one path and one path only to win the AFC North. Beat or tie. Tie would favor Pittsburgh against the Baltimore Ravens. So the division comes down to Sunday Night Football, and I can't wait. It's going to be a blast. No question about it. I love Patrick Brown's in the comments, suspenseful music, loading for these meaningful games. Hey, this is what it's all about, Patrick Brown, and to the audience watching and or listening. So let's go and get to the games that really matter. We'll start with the game that, for all intents and purposes, likely will decide the NFC South. It's the Carolina Panthers. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa is a 3-point favorite at home in this game, and we know in Vegas, you basically get 2.5 or 3 by default by being the home team. The reality is for Tampa, boy, it's been a tale of 2 seasons. This is a team that started 6-2. Baker Mayfield's in the MVP discussion. Since then, 1-7. Baker dealt with injuries. He got hurt in that game against the LA Rams in Los Angeles. Hasn't quite looked the same since. This is a Bucs season that's been derailed by injuries, whether it's to Mike Evans, Ibuka's missed time, Bucky Irving's missed time, the O-line's been beat up, and now it's a situation where, especially after that blown game against the Atlanta Falcons a few Thursday Night Football games ago, Todd Bowles' job could be on the line in this game against the Carolina Panthers. For Carolina, I mean, you would call this a successful season, without question, if they win this game, even if they go out in round 1, which most believe that they will. You finish 9-8. You'd be great in clutch games this year. Great. Bryce Young's been one of the more clutch quarterbacks in the NFL this season, making all the big throws and runs that you need a quarterback to do in these spots. Dave Canales has done a good job rebuilding this Panthers team. They've drafted relatively well. Listen, Tampa Bay has won the division for the last 4 seasons consecutively, and they've been in the playoffs the last 5 seasons if you include 2020, which is when they won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady in the pandemic year. That streak will end. Give me in my upset of the week the Carolina Panthers over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 24-20. That means Carolina will be your NFC South champions and the 4 seed in the NFC playoff picture. And for Tampa Bay, the collapse is completed. They will be eliminated from playoff contention. They will start at 6-2 and finish 1-8. That's a disaster. And by the way, I saved New Orleans and Atlanta just to provide suspense. I do think Atlanta's going to win 27-24, but I do like the Saints plus 3.5 even without Chris Olave. That's a 7-8 for Atlanta. I should say an 8. Regardless, Falcons win this game. Ironically, I feel like the Saints and Falcons at this point in time might be the best 2 teams in the division. Imagine if all 4 of those teams came in 8-8. Then who gets in? Then where's the tiebreaker? It almost happened. If a couple games go a different way, but regardless, Carolina wins. They will be in the playoffs as the NFC's 4 seed. Tampa Bay out of the playoff picture. To our next matchup, a game that will decide the NFC West champion and the NFC's number 1 seed. It's the Seattle Seahawks and it's the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle on the road is favored -1.5. So safe to say, I've said Trevor Lawrence since Thanksgiving has been the best quarterback in football. The last 2 weeks, that title goes to Brock Purdy. 10 total touchdowns and only 2 turnovers in the last 10 games. So Purdy's been outstanding. He's been a guy that I've had a lot of skepticism about, but he's moved well. He's making plays outside the pocket, which he's done from time to time, often with some ill-advised throws. That's not been the case the last few weeks. Being able to carry a defense in San Francisco that cannot get pressure. As for Seattle, Sam Darnold. To me, there are 2 individuals with more pressure than Sam Darnold this weekend, and that's Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers, who we'll obviously get to later, but both of which, if they lose, they're out of the playoffs. That won't be the case for Seattle. But how history repeats itself. Sam Darnold was in this exact same spot, identical to last year, just with a different team. on the road, division on the line, 1 seed on the line. The fact of the matter is last year, Darnold was bad in that game against Detroit. I think they only scored like 9 points. And then he was bad in their playoff loss to the Rams. If I remember correctly, the O-line got worked by LA, Jared Verse and Byron Young. But still, he was not good in those 2 games. He gets the ultimate opportunity to redeem himself in this spot with Seattle. I think the fact that this San Francisco defensive line, dead last in the league in sacks, and as I saw a stat earlier from Doug Clawson, shout out to Doug Clawson, no team in NFL history, if his research is correct, no team in NFL history has been dead last in sacks and made, forget a Super Bowl, a conference championship game. Now, we'll see how that happens in the playoffs because both these teams are already in. But I think that favors the Seahawks. I think Seattle's fast to the football, secondary and defense give San Francisco problems. They limit Christian McCaffrey. Give me the Seattle Seahawks -1.5, 27-19 over the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle 27, Niners 19, and therefore the Seahawks will clinch the NFC West and by definition clinch the number 1 seed in the NFC. Coming up next, again, we're going to do this in order of importance. So what do we have next? Okay, it is now time for my favorite segment of all time. Before we get to that, I think we got a comment here from Patrick. Patrick, Seattle, San Francisco will be more entertaining. Seattle, look at that. Patrick, great minds think alike. Patrick in the comments, and I know he typed this right before I put the score up. Seattle, San Francisco will be more entertaining. Give me Seattle in a very close 27-19. Patrick, I see you, bro. Great minds think alike. Let's go to our next matchup. It's now time for my favorite segment of all time. It is simply called
Bettin Man.
If I were a bet man, I'm looking long and hard at the NFC East matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. Philly is a 4.5-point favorite in this game. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bryson, Jalen Hurts is sitting. Saquon Barkley's sitting. A.J. Brown's sitting. Devontae Smith. All these guys, all the major playmakers for Philadelphia are sitting, which, boy, they need a week off before the postseason to get that offense fixed. But I'm a believer in the occasional backup quarterback making a name for himself, making other teams look at him this offseason and be like, maybe let's bring him in our quarterback room. We saw it to a greater degree with Malik Willis last week against Baltimore. He was sensational. Enter Tanner McKee, a guy who had a pretty good preseason with this team, a guy who is comfortable in these moments, against a Washington team that already has one of the worst defenses in football, and God bless him, he's been everywhere, man. Josh Johnson, who will be making another start, wasn't very good against Philly 2 weeks ago and was okay against Dallas. It was mostly the run game for Washington that gave them any chance to win that game on Christmas against the Cowboys. 4.5, I don't like it. I love it. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles 20-13 over the Washington Commanders. 20-13 Philly wins. They do cover the 4.5. If I were a bet man, give me Philly -4.5 over Washington. I picked Philly first because up next will be Lions versus Bears. Now, if the Bears win, they're above Philly, for the 2 seed. By all accounts, it sounds like Chicago's going to play their starters. So in a spot where they know the 2 seed's on the line, this is an opportunity for them to get another matchup against Green Bay, who we know almost beat them a few weeks ago. They did beat them back at Lambeau. The game will be at Soldier Field, obviously. NFC North rivalry matchup. Never forget, though, the Lions are out of the playoff picture. Never forget, 2022, this is the moment, ladies and gentlemen, that on this very show, I fell in love with Dan Campbell and the Lions culture. Week 18 at Green Bay. Detroit came in that game knowing 30 minutes before the game, a half hour, we can win by 1,000 points and our season's over. They needed Seattle to lose and them to win, then they'd be in. Seattle won, so Detroit was done. And they retired Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay with a 20-16 win. So if there's one coach you look at and be like, this game doesn't matter, it's Dan Campbell. Even despite the deficiencies at both coordinator positions, which I talked about extensively on Monday's show, those clips are on social media. Feel free to check them out. This is a culture opportunity for Detroit. That said, one of those former coordinators, Ben Johnson, and the Bears got humiliated back in week 2 in Detroit. They gave up 50-plus points. Caleb Williams was awful in that game. Now you got an opportunity to wrap up the 2 seed, to beat your old boss in Dan Campbell. After he and the Lions, let's be honest, kind of rubbed it in the early part of the season. Bears get their revenge, albeit in a close-ish game. 28-20. Bears over the Lions. Chicago -3. They do clinch, by definition, the number 2 seed in the conference. Give me Chicago 28-20 over the over the Detroit Lions. Patrick's in the comments. Eagles need all the rest before LA flies in next weekend. Don't trust Philly's play calling or Nick Sirianni's antics and motivating his team. Yeah, it's definitely hit or miss in that regard. Okay, it's now time for my favorite segment of all time. It is simply called, ladies and gentlemen.
Would I have Bettin Man?
If I were a Bettin Man, which, by the way, I should have mentioned this before the first If I Were a Bettin Man, 2 consecutive 3-0 weeks, ladies and gentlemen. So we're into the regular season strong, and we're going to the postseason red hot, and I feel very good about it. If I were a Bettin Man, I'm looking at an AFC East matchup between the woebegone, good-for-nothing New York Jets taking on the Buffalo Bills. The graphic I'm looking at right now looks like there's a little bit of an error because it has Philadelphia's, the Philadelphia line on it. It says Eagles -4.5, so ignore that. But the real actual line for this game is Buffalo -7.5. Wait a second. And this is a story maybe I've been out of the loop. No one's talked about it this week. This is the last game the Bills will ever play in Highmark Stadium. Barring, of course, if we get a Bills-Chargers AFC Championship game, and that's not going to happen. It's the last time, in all likelihood, that the Buffalo Bills will ever play in Highmark Stadium. And they're celebrating that. They announced before the season that they're going to be wearing those red throwback helmets from the 90s Bills, the Jim Kelly days. Last time ever playing in front of those fans in that stadium. Against the JV Jets. Against a team that, is a barely watchable product each and every week. It says Eagles -4.5. It should say Buffalo -7.5. I apologize. But if I were a bet man, Bills -7.5, 31-10. This game ain't gonna be close. Opportunity to close the stadium and do it in good fashion. Patrick, Detroit season went AWOL when Dan Campbell took over the play calling. Correct. Patrick also says that Bills will go out with a blowout win to close Highmark Stadium. They will. I think there's... Obviously, they're going to win. The Jets aren't winning this game. The Buffalo Bills are out of the picture in terms of the AFC East, but winning this game, they can potentially give themselves a shot to get the 5 seed, which brings us to our next game, which, ironically, I'm predicting some of the afternoon games before a couple of the early window games, because these will decide the AFC South. It is the Indianapolis Colts, and Riley Leonard making his first ever start, by the way, going to Houston to take on the Texans. Houston is a favorite of 10 points in this game. So, first of all, and with respect to Phillip Rivers, who was solid, was okay against Seattle, albeit on limited rest before the game, limited practice. The next week, pretty darn good against San Francisco before the pick 6. And then last week, he struggled a little bit against Jacksonville. It's a great defense. You expected that. Riley Leonard's making his first start. Frankly, I like Riley Leonard. Should have been given this opportunity earlier when Daniel Jones went down. But regardless, I liked Riley Leonard at college at Notre Dame. I would have liked my Steelers to take him mid-round, but it is what it is. Houston, on the other hand, has everything to play for. They can still get the AFC South title. And they can, at worst, with a win, be the 5 seed over the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Chargers. I think 10's too many points with an offense that's struggling like this in a divisional game. I will take Houston to win 21-13. Again, I still have too many questions about C.J. Stroud, the consistency there, this offensive line. I think Indianapolis will put up a fine effort in this game on the road. 10 is a little too many points. Houston 21-13 over the Indianapolis Colts. And by definition, Houston can be no worse than the number 5 seed. But will they win the AFC South? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because in our next matchup, it is my favorite segment of all time. It is called
Bettin Man.
If I Were a Bet Man, the Tennessee Titans are coming to Jacksonville. And the Jaguars still have a shot to get the 1 seed. It's slim, but it's on the board. It's a non-zero chance they get the 1 seed. All they got to do is beat the terrible Tennessee Titans. Rubbish. Garbage. Good for nothing. They're going to do that in dominant fashion. Give me the Jacksonville Jaguars -13 and to win this one 31-15. Jacksonville, by definition, will be your AFC South champions. As, by the way, I predicted before the season began. I said Jacksonville will win the AFC South, and I said Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence in particular with Liam Cohen would have a bounce-back year. Well, Trevor Lawrence since Thanksgiving has been the best quarterback in the National Football League, and if I had an MVP vote, he'd get my number 5 spot behind Stafford, Maye, McCaffrey, and Myles Garrett. He's been that good. So that would mean Houston's going to be the 5 seed, and the Jacksonville Jaguars will be, at worst, the 3 seed and the AFC South champion. In our next matchup, Jacksonville needs the Patriots to lose, and they need the Broncos to lose. So they're looking at a game. New England is at home, Gillette Stadium, against the Miami Dolphins. Patriots are a huge favorite in this one, minus 11.5. A lot of the sharps in Vegas, at least the ones that I've seen, like Miami in the points, just because they're going to be like, New England's going to get off to a hot start at home against a Dolphins team whose season is over. But then look at the scoreboard, look at, in the stadium and see, Denver's up 21-0. Okay, we're not going to get the number 1 seed. We've already wrapped up the AFC East. Let's sit Drake Maye, sit all these guys, and, get ready for the postseason next week. But as you'll see in my next prediction, this kind of spoils who I think is going to cover in the next game. I don't think that Denver Chargers game, despite Herbert being out, is going to be just, it's a walkover and that's it. So I do like New England in this game to win 32-17 over the Dolphins. Quinn Ewers has been fine. The Patriots, I do have some questions about their defense. I don't think Quinn Ewers will expose that too much. Patriots minus 11, 32-17 against the Miami Dolphins, and New England will be no worse than the number 2 seed. But they want home field advantage, man. They want a first-round bye. Well, let's see if they'll get it. AFC West matchup. Los Angeles Chargers, Denver Broncos from Denver. The Broncos in this game are favored minus 12.5. Now, big reason they are favored minus 12.5, Justin Herbert's sitting for this game. Justin Herbert's dealt with a lot of injuries this year. He's taking a lot of hits behind that beat-up offensive line in LA. So Jim Harbaugh says, hey, I need my quarterback as healthy as I can have him for the playoffs. I will surrender, in all likelihood, being the 7 seed and having to probably go to New England or Denver. I'm going to sit Herbert and take my chances in the wild card round, which I think is a smart, prudent move. So it's Trey Lance. A Trey Lance who... Famously on this show back in 2021, I said Trevor Lawrence is far and away the best quarterback in that draft. Obviously, that's proven to be the case. I thought Trey Lance would be number 2, and that hasn't panned out. That good tape that he showed from time to time at North Dakota State, that did not come to fruition. If it didn't come to fruition under Kyle Shanahan, then it was never going to come to fruition whatsoever. But this is a Denver team. I'll be on the road, but this is a Denver team that is a 13.5-point favorite. Went to Kansas City with Chris Aludicon. I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name correctly. Not the backup to Mahomes, the 3rd string to Mahomes. With the Chiefs having nothing to play for. And they needed a game-winning drive with 2 minutes left to win the game. This is a Broncos team that beat the New York Football Jets, I kid you not, 13-11. This is a Broncos team that was down 18 in the 4th quarter at home to the Giants. Need to pull off one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history to win that game. And you expect me to think they're going to cover? I know Trey Lance is a starter. That ain't happening. Give me the Chargers plus 12.5. However, I do think Denver will win this game, kind of pull away a little bit, 24-13. A little bit of a scare here. Enough so to where New England and Mike Vrabel says, let's keep Drake Maye in a couple more drives here, against Miami. But give me the Chargers plus 12.5. Denver, though, wins outright 24-13, and they will be the AFC's number 1 seed. As I said earlier, to me, the most fraudulent number 1 seed that we have seen since the Tennessee Titans back in 2021, but nonetheless, a number 1 seed they will be, and they will get a week off. Before we get to our final game, which involves my team, Patrick, Houston, the team nobody wants to see. This defense, mercy. Riley Leonard will be running for his life. He might be, Patrick, but again, I don't think this Texans offense against us okay Colts defense is going to be special. But I do think Houston wins. Okay. 272 regular season games will have been played in this NFL season. Game 272 will decide the AFC North. The winner will be in the postseason as a division champion, the 4th seed, and get a home playoff game. The loser is done. Their season is over. So this is, in essence, a playoff game. Like, you win, advance the wild card weekend, lose, you're done. It features, as far as I'm concerned, in the 21st century, the best rivalry in the National Football League. It's the Baltimore Ravens. It's my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers with Baltimore as a 3.5-point favorite. So, we've known for a few days now, about for 48 hours, but it became official today. Lamar Jackson, 100% is a go for Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he is going to play. No Tyler Huntley, barring, God forbid, knock on wood, a Lamar Jackson injury. Man, I went back and forth on this game. I said it on Monday, and I'll tell you again today. Up until about 3 or 4 hours ago, I did not know who I was picking. I frankly, I'll be honest, I know what I'm rooting for to happen, which I'll reveal after I make my pick, because it may not be the same as my pick. But there's a few sure things, by and large, sure things in Vegas. Is great coaches like Andy Reid, Sean McVay, coming off of a bye. Miami Dolphins playing in cold weather. You always take the other team in those spots, money line. And the third of which, Mike Tomlin as a home underdog. Especially Mike Tomlin as a home underdog in division, which we know the Ravens and Steelers. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh are more familiar with each other than any coaches in the history of the NFL, with the exception of two of the greatest ever, Curly Lambeau and George Halas. Only Lambeau and Halas coach against each other more in NFL history than Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. Two guys who very well could be coaching for their jobs on Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh, PA at Acrisure Stadium. Is Tomlin capable, for all the criticisms, many of which I stand by 10 toes down and have for years on this show, is he capable at least as a home dog beating the Baltimore Ravens, or not beating the Baltimore Ravens per se, but covering as a 3.5-point home dog against the Ravens, a team he's more familiar with than anybody, at home? The answer to that question to me is yes. A little bit of spoiler, I got Pittsburgh plus 3.5. I almost put it in Bettin Man, but I'm like, Jacksonville over Tennessee is a more sure bet to me. If I did 5 games for Viral Bettin Man, which, spoiler, I might do next season, this would make it. If it's 3, it does not. The question is, as it often is in these games, the quarterbacks. For Lamar Jackson, this is a guy, to say the very least, has not played his best ball in big spots. This is a guy who in the postseason has won all of 2 times. One of which came against the Ryan Tannehill Titans in the COVID year, and the other of which came against a rookie CJ Stroud at home as the number 1 seed. In other words, when Lamar Jackson is expected, or not necessarily expected to win, or is not a huge favorite to win a playoff game, or a big gotta-have-it game, he didn't win it. Well, a lot of people expected Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to win this game. On the other side of that coin, however, is a man by the name of Aaron Rodgers, who very well, ladies and gentlemen, could be playing one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Sunday night might be the last time we ever see him buckle up that chin strap. Might be the last time we ever see Aaron Rodgers. Because he says, he kind of alluded to, I'm a free agent, I'm on a 1-year deal. No one's picking up Aaron Rodgers at age 42. Like, he's done after this season. Either Pittsburgh brings him back, please God, don't let that happen, or he retires. So Sunday night could be the last time we see Aaron. What do I know about Aaron? Well, I know that, not to toot my own horn, but I guess I'll toot my own horn a little bit, is that since the 2020 NFC Championship game, not kidding, you can check the tape, I have called every single step of his career. In 2020, as a favorite number 1 seed MVP of the league. Go back, check the tape. I said Brady and the Bucs are going to Green Bay and winning. That's what they did. The Packers get the 1 seed again in 2021, and Aaron wins the MVP again. Shouldn't have won it against Tom Brady, but regardless, he got his 4th MVP. And I said, yeah, that's great. San Francisco's going to beat them in that first playoff game. Oh, 6th seed San Francisco, Jimmy G, you're out of here. They did, 13-10 on a walk-off field goal by Robbie Gould. That next year, I said coming in, they're not going to make the playoffs. Green Bay's not a playoff team. Green Bay wasn't a playoff team. 2023, who knows what would have happened? Aaron tore his Achilles. So that year's void for anybody's prediction. Last year, folks were like, man, Aaron's coming back off of injury. Robert Saleh is just, and Saleh's a great defensive coordinator, but Robert Saleh is just this proven head coach, as we all know. And in an AFC East with the Buffalo Bills, they're definitely, the Jets are not just contenders to win the division, they could win the AFC. And I came on the show and said, yeah, they're not very good. O-line stinks, quarterback hasn't been good in years, and the coach isn't that good. Guess what? The Jets won 5 games. I said they'd be below 500. They were worse than I thought. So in other words, I have called every step of his career to the dot since 2020. Since the 2020 NFC Championship. So in this game, I will be completely honest with you. And I don't even know how proud I am to say this. I will be rooting for the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday night. As hard as it will be, I will be rooting for the Baltimore Ravens Sunday night so that this ridiculous Aaron Rodgers experiment can end. And so that finally, it feels like there's I think Vegas has it like a 63% chance, maybe, just maybe, the end of mediocrity will conclude on Sunday Night Football and the end of the Mike Tomlin era. But that's not what I think is going to happen. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win 20-17 over the Baltimore Ravens. TJ Watt's back in the lineup. I know there's no DK Metcalf and no Darnell Washington. But Lamar Jackson, 2-5 in his career against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's really struggled in Pittsburgh against this team. Watt's back in the lineup. Fresh legs, off the lung situation. He'll be energized. He'll be ready to go. Pittsburgh wins this game. Pittsburgh wins the AFC North. The Ravens, by definition, will be eliminated from playoff contention. I'm not sure how I feel about it because and we'll show how I think the playoff standings will look. I think the Steelers are going to be one and done again and get crushed again. I'm pulling for the Ravens. I am. But I think the Steelers are going to win. It's a real conundrum I found myself in. You know, if we had just beaten the Cleveland Browns. Again, part of the reason that I'm picking Pittsburgh is watching as a Steelers fan, I've observed something about Mike Tomlin. He's an atrocious coach when you expect him to do anything more than be mediocre, as we saw last week against the Browns. But most people expect the Ravens as an 8-8 team. They've already lost to Pittsburgh in Baltimore this season, just weeks ago. At Pittsburgh is a 3.5-point favorite. No one believes in Pittsburgh. That's usually where Tomlin and the Steelers get the job done, at least, of course, until the playoffs when they get clobbered each and every year. So I will be in purgatory for the vast majority of Sunday night. I will be. Like, I don't know what take I'll have after the game, on the show. I don't know. Patrick has a guess. He says, if the Steelers lose Sunday night, you're going to be on a burning hot stove. If y'all win, early playoff exit right on schedule. Which is precisely why I'm rooting for the Steelers to lose, Patrick. I really, really am. Maybe I should phrase it differently. I'm not rooting for the Ravens to win. I'm rooting for the Steelers to lose. Free me from this misery. Not just of this season, not just having to root for a team quarterbacked by Aaron Rodgers, who we know is at his worst in the biggest games, but free me of the mediocrity of the dumbest and most meaningless streak in the history of football, Mike Tomlin and his no losing season streak. Let me free. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think when it is all said and done, that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be in the postseason as the 5 seed, or 4 seed rather, and will host Houston. So let's go ahead and put up the playoff standings, what I think they're going to look like after the games. We'll start in the AFC. This is what I think it will look like once the games have been played. The Broncos will be the 1 seed, and they'll get first run by for the first round of the playoffs. The Patriots will be the 2. The Jacksonville Jaguars will be the 3 as the AFC South champions, which I think they'll clinch against the Titans on one of my If I Were a Bettin Man games. And finally, honestly, to my chagrin, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be the 4 seed and the AFC North champions and host a playoff game. For the first time, by the way, since 2020, which was the pandemic year. The 3 wildcard teams will be, in this order, the 5 seed, Houston Texans, the 6 seed, Buffalo Bills, and the 7 seed, Los Angeles Chargers, which means I think in Wild Card Weekend, we will get the following matchups. Patriots at home against the Chargers. Again, I'm not predicting any of these games until next Friday. Patriots at home against the Chargers. Jacksonville at home against Buffalo. That's a fascinating matchup. And Pittsburgh at home against Houston. I'll predict that game. We're going to lose. So that's what I think we're going to see. In the NFC, and honest, I'm going to be honest, I'm double and triple checking tiebreakers between between 5 and 6, San Francisco and the Rams. Okay, so the Rams, by the math, it looks like if they win against the Cardinals, which I actually forgot to predict that game. I do have the Rams. Do we have that graphic? I think we do. Maybe not. No, I don't know. Here it is. Yeah, I got the Rams with the Cardinals 27-13, minus 8.5. It looks like, again, I could be wrong, and I've got the backup graphic if it's not the case, that if the Rams beat the Cardinals and the night before, Niners lose to Seattle, that I think the third tiebreaker, wins against common opponents, would come into play. I'm almost certain. Let me double and triple check what the playoff standings look like today, because right now San Francisco's ahead of the Niners, or ahead of the Rams. So should that come into play, this is what I believe the NFC standings would look like. Seattle, by winning on Saturday, will be the 1 seed in the NFC West champion. The Bears, by winning against Detroit, will be the 2 seed. Philadelphia, then, the defending champions, will be the 3 seed. Carolina, I think, is going to beat Tampa Bay tomorrow. They'll be the 4 seed. And then, again, we've got the backup graphic if we need it. But the Rams will be the 5. The Niners will be the 6. And the Packers, we already knew this, will be the 7. That means, if the tiebreakers are correct here between San Francisco and LA, we will get, oh, how good is this? 2 seed Chicago, the oldest rivalry in NFL history. 2 seed Chicago at historic Soldier Field, hosting the Green Bay Packers, who, by the way, for the 3rd year in a row, are the 7 seed. Now, we know, thus far, in this new 17 playoff structure format, Green Bay's the only team to win a playoff game as the 7 seed. So, and they did that against Dallas, obviously, as you remember 2 years ago. Philadelphia will host the Niners in Philadelphia. And Carolina will host the Rams, who, by the way, they've already beaten. If my math serves me correctly, if the tiebreaker serves me correctly. Matter of fact, before we get out of here, let me double check the Rams 49ers tiebreakers. Again, we had so many graphics to do. Let's make sure. So let's see. The NFC West tiebreaker scenarios. Niners wire. I wish I could. I'm not going to share the screen. Let me double check here. Okay, so yes, so the Rams would be the 5 if they win and the Niners lose, which I think is going to happen. So for final time, this is what I think the playoff structure will look like in the NFC, or at least the playoff matchups. Seahawks are the 1 seed, Bears versus Packers, Eagles versus Niners, Panthers versus Rams. That's pretty good. And then the AFC too, one more time in the AFC, Patriots, Chargers, Jaguars, Bills, Steelers, Texans. That's how I think it's going to look. And it's going to be fun, no question about it. With that, that is all the time we have for today's show. I appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live in what's going to be a loaded show on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, Twitch, X, and on Instagram. What a great weekend. What's a great week it's already been to start 2026. Some great college football playoff scenarios. 2 divisions will be decided. Likely 2 divisions will be decided. Tomorrow, 1 seed will be decided in the NFC. I mean, how good is this? How good is this? I don't know how I'm going to feel. I'll honestly be kind of happy if my Steelers lose on Sunday night to the Ravens, because it might mean the end of the Tomlin era. And it definitely should be the end of the Aaron Rodgers brief era in Pittsburgh. If we win, I don't know how I'll feel either. You'll just have to tune in for Monday, because you can bet your bottom dollar we're leading the show with Ravens Steelers. And again, I don't know how I'll feel. But regardless, hope everybody has a great weekend. Be sure to tune in to Carving Up Live again Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, Twitch, X, and on Instagram. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. And peace out. And here's to a Happy New Year. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.